Welcome to the Don't Call It Small Business Podcast, powered by Foreman & Associates, LLC, a consulting and professional development services firm. I'm your host, Natasha Foreman. Our podcast provides professionals and organizational leaders with helpful advice, tips, and business news that you can use for training, development, strategic realignment, and more. We examine the tough questions and issues impacting our businesses, households, and communities. If you like what you hear and find the content useful, please share us with your inner circle. Now that we've covered that and you've learned a little about us and why we do what we do, let's get to work. Join us for today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode 83. I'm glad to be here with all of you today. Let me start you off with a quote. It's tying in the theme of today's episode. It's from Satoshi Nakamoto. This is way back in the day when he, she, they said, if you don't believe it or don't get it, I don't have the time to try to convince you. Sorry. This was in the early stages of the Bitcoin invention and all the naysayers and so on and so forth. So, wow. Now, let's talk digital currency. Specifically, let's look at the crypto craziness being highlighted in the news and various forums. What we're going to do is this, because it is such a huge umbrella of stuff. We'll start current day, and then we're going to back up to when the craziness and chaos kind of took off, and we're going to blend you back to current and weave you back in for context. So there's different things that are coming into people's minds, and is the industry in for a major crackdown and regulations? I mean, this has been rumored for years. And then, you can think of this really quick. Is there anything other than greed that caused this nonsense that we're witnessing with all of these different crashes and, these different firms having to file bankruptcy, blah, blah, blah. So, let's look at just what's going on this week, and then we'll kind of, segue here and there. So if you don't know, crypto broker Genesis is cutting 20% of its 200 plus person workforce, and their CEO, Michael Morrow, is stepping down. So the COO, the chief operating officer, is going to take over until a permanent replacement can step in. Genesis were the largest creditor to Three Arrows Capital, which is a firm we're going to be discussing shortly. If you don't know, you're going to find out today. Let's come back to Genesis in a little bit, and we're going to move forward with another company also in this crypto world. A bankruptcy court has allowed Celsius Mining, a subsidiary of Celsius Network, to continue to mine and sell Bitcoin through bankruptcy. The company isn't making money mining yet, but one of their attorneys said it was close to profitability. So I was like, if you're not making money, how are you close to being profitable? But whatever. But the judge in the matter expressed concern over the lack of profitability, but said he would trust the company's judgment. I think that has a lot to say deal with the fact that the judge, as many of us, really don't understand cryptocurrencies, the global currency of Bitcoin, so on and so forth. So you kind of, if you're going to be a fair judge of it with not full expert, if you want to say expert knowledge, then you do kind of have to just trust someone's judgment, I guess. So, I don't know. I guess the world just going to have to watch and see what happens and who's impacted by those decisions. I'm sure you may be scratching your head and wondering, well, how in the world did Celsius Network end up in bankruptcy court? Yeah, I want you to stick around and I'll get to those deets in a little bit. But before I do, let's look over at crypto.com's big news. Crypto.com just received a regulatory approval in the UK, and they're now a registered exchange. UK lawmakers also they're also considering a bill that would direct the Bank of England, the FCA, and other agencies to enforce rules of stable coins. And we see that the US, EU, and other nations are also considering new rules for the industry. And we're seeing stablecoin issuers facing more regulatory scrutiny, which, I mean, honestly, they should have expected, since there had been so much pushback for years about, the digital currency and cryptocurrencies seemingly competing with mainstream standards. And I mean, how many of us steered clear because traditionalists warned us of the doom and gloom of cryptocurrency? I mean, there's a quote from Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, who said, it's a fraud. And it's worse than tulip bulbs. And this was back in 2017 during the Bitcoin bubble at that time. And he wasn't a fan of Bitcoin. I mean, clearly. And since then, however, JP Morgan has announced their own form of cryptocurrency, suggesting that they're not as adverse to crypto as that 2017 quote. I mean, one of Bitcoin's main aims is to remove the need for such huge banks like JP Morgan. So it's unlikely that Jamie Dimon will ever truly change his mind about a competitor that wants to put him out of business. Like, this isn't just this isn't just our other competitor that has been around for the 100+ years, and you kind of just been, ebbing and flowing and jibbing and jabbing and doing some rope-a-dopes every now and then. Like, we're talking about someone who's trying to say, I'm trying to make sure that you and those like you are no longer relevant. That is what a lot of people fear. I mean, there are some that said back in the 90s, the mid-90s, the ways in which Bitcoin and similar instruments could actually enhance and benefit the banking systems, But anyway, we'll talk about that some other time. When we look back to 2010 and you kind of look in that window between 2010 and 2018, there was a major propaganda machine that was cranking hard and fast against Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And that was until they could, of course, create something resembling their competition, right? To market to their current client base as digital currency, even sometimes even saying that their products are cryptocurrency, when what analysts are saying is that a lot of these banks are actually just repackaging their current product lines and making them look like they have the same features of Bitcoin and other digital currencies. Yeah, but we'll save that rabbit hole for another episode, because this right here is enough alone by itself. So I will say this: the fear of Bitcoin is unlike other digital currencies in that, as Janet Yellen, the former chair of the U.S. Federal Reserve, was quoted as saying, the Federal Reserve simply does not have authority to supervise or regulate Bitcoin in any way. And that's because Bitcoin's not a U.S. cryptocurrency. Instead, it's the first truly global currency, right? It isn't run by anyone in particular, but anyone who wants to get involved can. And this makes it really difficult for authorities to formulate regulations around Bitcoin specifically. And that's why it makes it extremely difficult to stop. You can't just do like we do with most product lines and, come out with a competing line that forces it out, or where you can, buy them out or put pressure on them, or, or whatever. So it does. And we've, of course, as I mentioned earlier, there's been, rumors about bans and major regulations, but it's never stopped Bitcoin from progressing. And even with these ebbs and flows and ups and downs that we're, currently seeing, it's the same thing when we look at the stock market for the most part. I mean, and heck, if it wasn't for Bitcoin, WikiLeaks wouldn't be what it is today. Like, let's just take a trip down memory lane. When major credit card companies were trying to block payments to WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, asked for donations in Bitcoin instead, which allowed his company to survive. And there was hesitation by Nakamoto to allow those transactions to take place. But once he or they or whoever's the brains behind Bitcoin made the decision to take the risk and allow WikiLeaks to use Bitcoin, and understanding that at that time, Bitcoin was a very new, it was a baby. It was entering shark infested waters, right? But, taking that risk, allowing those transactions for WikiLeaks, well, that has made it possible for old Julian to keep pressing onward without the restrictions that he was facing at that time. So there you go. Bitcoin saved the day for WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. Here's the thing, focusing our attention back to stablecoin. It is a new asset class and it mirrors an existing asset class. So the natural progression is that the new kid on the block needs to understand and comply with the rules of engagement, and there may be some modifications to the rules to make them more appropriate for and inclusive of the new kid. But if folks thought the new kid would be able to roam freely on the block, popping wheelies and doing whatever and whenever without someone snatching their handlebars and saying something to them, then, well, you're just being naive. I mean, so, folks wanting to pump the brakes on stablecoin or put some restrictions or, set some ground rules or say, hey, like, you should expect it. Now, we'll talk about crypto regulation rumors in another episode. I'm just going to keep saying that because people always want to regulate something, put rules on something, and I get it, We'll save that for another episode or two. So let's instead skip backwards, and we're going to look to the nonsense that helped create the added fear and horror that people are tweeting, posting, and podcasting all about, that, your YouTube is being flooded with. I think it was as recently as March, the Singapore-based hedge fund, Three Arrows Capital, that I mentioned earlier, right? They're also known as 3AC, and they manage about $10 billion in assets, making it one of the most prominent crypto hedge funds in the world. Now, the firm is co-founded by Zhu Su and Kyle Davies, and they're facing the dread of bankruptcy court after the plunge in cryptocurrency prices and a particularly risky trading strategy. It came together as a toxic dynamic duo, and it wiped out 3AC's assets and left them unable to repay lenders. So they filed for Chapter 15 last month in the Southern District of New York. And for those of you that are unaware, non-U.S. companies can use Chapter 15 to block creditors who want to file lawsuits or tie up assets in the U.S. So prior to the bankruptcy filing, a court in BVI, the British Virgin Islands, had ordered the fund to liquidate in order to pay back its debts. So there's that. I'm just giving you kind of like a Cliff Notes version on 3AC. And then you end up seeing that crypto exchange blockchain.com, they reported that they're facing about a $270 million hit on loans that they provided 3AC. And then you have digital asset brokerage, Voyager Digital. They end up having to file a Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection after 3AC couldn't pay back the approximate like $670 million it had borrowed from them. And then, it gets worse. US-based crypto lenders Genesis and BlockFi, and then you have crypto derivatives platform BitMEX and crypto exchange FTX. All are also being hit with losses. As I mentioned Genesis earlier, they end up filing a $1.2 billion claim against 3AC. So it just gets crazier and crazier. So in an interview with CNBC, Nick Carter, a partner at Castle Island Ventures, which focuses on blockchain investments, Nick had said that credit is being destroyed and withdrawn, and underwriting standards are being tightened. Solvency is being tested, so everyone is withdrawing liquidity from crypto lenders. So, of course, the first question that comes to mind is, well, how did 3AC get into this position? Oh, Okay. All right. Well, this is the craziness. Their strategy involved borrowing money from across the industry and then turning around and investing that capital in other often emerging, like baby crypto projects. So stuff that was just like now just kind of like sprouting and trying to, take form. Yeah. So they had already been around for about a decade, which helped their founders, Zhu Su and Kyle Davies. It gave them a measure of credibility in an industry that's populated by a lot of newbies, right? A lot of freshmen. And, both guys are, I think around 35 or something like that. So, that means they started in their mid 20s. So now they've built up this reputation and credibility, and so people trusted them. And then, Zhu co-hosted a podcast that was extremely popular, a podcast on crypto. So that, added to the popularity and credibility and the trust that was built into them and their company. So with this buzz and exposure, they built trust. And for a lot of people, it ended up being blind trust, right? There's I I found this quote where it says 3AC was supposed to be the adult in the room, and that was said by Nick Bhatia, a professor of finance and business economics at USC, University of Southern California, when Nick was interviewed by CNBC. So now my question is this: well, gosh, who's the adult in the room now that 3AC's been clobbered? Is it? I mean, are the kids running amok? Like, what's going on? But that still doesn't explain how 3AC is where they currently are, right? You have to trace the steps backward to see where things deviated and got janky, as the saying goes. It's a saying that I like to use. So let's walk back. We'll just walk back. We don't have to walk back far. We're going to walk back to the collapse in May, so just a couple of months ago, of terraUSD, which is, symbol is UST. They had been one of the most popular US dollar peg stablecoin projects, and they are created by a Singapore-based Terraform Labs. That's the company, Terraform Labs, in 2018. UST is what's known as an algorithmic stablecoin. So the stability of UST relied on a complex set of code with very little hard cash to back up the arrangement, despite there have been promises that it would keep its value regardless of the volatility in the broader crypto market. So they were going to do something that no one else could do. That's what they promised. And using the lending platform called Anchor, investors were provided with incentives of 20% annual yield on their UST holdings, which many analysts said was unsustainable, but people bet on it anyway. I mean, they said it then and they said now that should have been a red flag for investors. Well, part of the Terra blockchain project, it's meant to track the value of the dollar. So like fellow stablecoins, Tether and USDC. However, unlike those cryptocurrencies, Terra doesn't have cash and other assets held in a reserve to back its token. Instead, it uses a complex mix of code alongside a sister token called Luna. And that's what they use to stabilize prices, or what they were using to stabilize prices. So let's break it down in simple terms. The Terra protocol would destroy and create new units of UST and Luna to adjust supply. So in theory, when the price of UST falls below the dollar, it can be taken out of circulation in exchange for Luna, making UST supply scarcer and boosting its price, right? Terra's creator, Do Kwon, ended up complicating matters by buying $3.5 billion worth of Bitcoin to provide as a backstop for UST in times of crisis. Now, the theory behind this move was that UST could eventually be redeemed for Bitcoin instead of Luna. But that was untested and hadn't yet been put to practice. So, yeah, this was like a let's throw it on the wall and hope it sticks. $3.5 billion piece of gum. Yeah. So UST, it was very important for Bitcoin investors like Luna Foundation Guard, which is an organization that was supporting the Terra project, and it was sitting on billions of dollars in Bitcoin that in the month of May, just a couple of months ago, people feared could be dumped onto the market to prop up UST. And the reason for this fear was because analysts pointed out that the group's Bitcoin wallet was what? Completely empty. Now remember, like, what? Huh? Wait a minute. Natasha, you just said that Terra's creator, Do Kwon, bought $3.5 billion of Bitcoin to provide as a backstop. So, how is their wallet empty? Yeah, that part. So now you see the tie-in with the Genesis story of this week and the heightened scrutiny of stablecoin. What's crazy is that when all hell broke loose with 3AC, their founders got ghost, as we used to say. No one could reach them for comment or even a tweet. They disappeared. They were outro. They were gone. After 5 long weeks of hiding out to avoid the shame storm and death threats. Jusu had said there had been death threats against them. After 5 weeks, the disgraced founders of Three Arrows Capital, they end up speaking extensively about the spectacular implosion of their once super successful hedge fund. And according to an interview with Bloomberg, both Zhu and Kyle said that their bungled crypto speculation had unleashed cascading margin calls on loans that they should have never made. They admit to it now. And they acknowledge the collapse triggered widespread pain. I mean, remember, yeah. But in addition to that, they mostly, or I should not in addition to, but just mostly, they mostly talked around questions, right, about the effect on others in the industry. They acknowledge it caused widespread pain, but they were trying to tap dance around, skip around, avoid really taking responsibility and accountability for the effect on others. Instead, they stressed that they suffered deep losses and then adamantly denying allegations that they pulled money out of 3AC before it all blew up. In the interview with Bloomberg, Zhu said, people may call us stupid, they may call us stupid or delusional, and I'll accept that, maybe. But they're gonna, say that I absconded funds during the last period where I actually put more of my personal money back in. That's not true. That's what he said. The two declined to say where they were because they were still in hiding. They just did an interview. They were still in hiding. But one of the lawyers on the call said that their ultimate destination is the UAE, United Arab Emirates, which, if you don't know it, it's emerged as a hotspot for crypto. So supposedly, they'll be moving headquarters from Singapore to Dubai, which, guess what? That's what they reported back in April. If you go back and look at the announcements back in April, they were already saying that they were planning on moving stuff to Dubai. So maybe they're there now. Maybe they're waiting until the dust settles a little bit and then they're going to go there. I don't know. It doesn't matter personally to me because I didn't invest in them. But I'm sure anyone that has, they're like, yo, what's going on? So how do they explain their blunder and fall? Well, in their interview, what Zhu said was that they positioned themselves for a kind of market that didn't end up happening. So once again, they threw gum on the wall and hope it stuck. They had a vision for where the market in dreamland should be, where they wanted it to be, but it didn't go according to how they dreamt it. And then Kyle Davies added in, I'm just going to quote, "We believed in everything to the fullest. We had almost all of our assets in there. And then in the good times, we did the best. And then in the bad times, we lost the most." I don't know about you, but if I were an investor, if I had loaned them money or whatever, I'd be like, what? What? That, huh? You got two co-founders. Zhu says we position ourselves for a kind of market that didn't end up happening. And then Kyle says we believed in everything to the fullest. We had almost all of our assets in there. So, and then in good times we did the best, and then in the bad times we lost the most. Okay. But just as I shared earlier, 3AC, they're not outliers. So this is not like, hey, they're just the only ones out there that did this. I mean, and that's literally what the two co-founders said. They describe a really bad chemical reaction. If you want that visualization, I'm going to give you a visualization of a really bad chemical reaction where there's a mixture of this interrelated one-way bets that's going on. And then you've got accommodative borrowing arrangements. And they come together and boom, blew up all at once. And that led to 3AC's demise, but also to bankruptcy, distress, and bailouts, at firms like Celsius Network that I mentioned earlier, and Voyager Digital, and BlockFi. Now remember, we started this conversation with Celsius Network. And here they are. They're being sued by former investment manager Jason Stone, who's called them out as frauds and even said they're running a Ponzi scheme. I mean, he's coming with the heat of accusations. So Celsius Network, they're being accused of artificially inflating the price of their own digital coin, failed to hedge risk, and engaged in activities that amounted to fraud. That's what the lawsuit alleges. And prior to all of this, Celsius, which offered customers interest for depositing their crypto, was forced to pause withdrawals for its users. And of course, because it was facing a liquidity crisis. So we're going to break things down a bit in case you're confused. Like, you're like, what? Wait a minute, huh? You do kind of feel like you're having a whiplash experience. Like this is a really jacked up roller coaster. So let me break this down. Celsius Network, they were acting like a bank, and it would offer customers yield, sometimes as high as nearly 19% if their deposit, if a customer would deposit their crypto with the company. So the firm would then lend that crypto out to others who were willing to pay a high interest rate to borrow it. Then Celsius would try to hurry up and pocket that money in order to give the yield back to customers. See that? You see that? So, yeah. See that, how that worked? They offered customers yield as high, sometimes as high as 19% if they deposit their crypto through Celsius Network. Then Celsius Network would lend that crypto out to others who were willing to pay a high interest rate to borrow it. And then Celsius tried to hurry and pocket the money in order to give the yield back to the original customers. So Stone, who's suing them, to give you kind of background on him, he had founded a company called KeyFi, which specialized in crypto trading strategies. And Celsius and KeyFi they had a handshake deal where KeyFi would manage billions of dollars in customer crypto deposits in return for a share of the profits generated from those crypto deposits. That's what it says in the lawsuit. So yeah, no formal written agreement, just some spit on the hand and a handshake in, this world crumbling by greed. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with that arrangement? So, so from August 2020, Celsius began transferring hundreds of millions of dollars in crypto assets to Stone and his team, according to the lawsuit. And Celsius set up a wallet on the Ethereum blockchain, which was referred to as 0xB1, OXB1. And that's where the company sent the assets Stone was to deploy. And that's what he put in his lawsuit. That's where they sent the assets that he was supposed to deploy. So he also claims that Celsius executives repeatedly assured him that the company had entered the necessary hedging transactions to ensure plus fluctuations of certain crypto assets, that those wouldn't be materially and negatively impacted, or they wouldn't materially and negatively impact the company or its ability to repay depositors. So Stone and his team had relied on these reassurances, these representations. But according to him, according to this lawsuit, Celsius lied to him. He even said they weren't even doing basic accounting, principles and standards. So I know you're wondering, I was wondering, well, how does the Ponzi scheme factor in? That's some strong words. Well, according to Stone's lawsuit, because of Celsius's failure to hedge against trading risk, it had massive liabilities to depositors denominated in the cryptocurrency Ether. And still it hadn't maintained holdings in that digital coin equal to those liabilities. So when customers tried to withdraw either deposits, Celsius was forced to buy more Ether in the open market at high prices. And that was around January 2021. And as a result, they suffered heavy losses. And so Stone alleges that Celsius then began to offer double-digit interest rates in order to lure in new depositors whose funds were used to repay earlier depositors and creditors. Hence the Ponzi scheme. So what happened to Stone and his business, right? Well, according to him, he left Celsius in March 2021, and then he claims that in his lawsuit that at that time of his departure, Celsius had a $100 million to $200 million hole in its balance sheet that it could not fully explain or resolve. And he claims that Celsius maintains control of the OXB1 Ethereum wallet and that the CEO of Celsius uses it for his own personal benefit. So there's an accusation there. And then there's numerous allegations made by Stone, including that Celsius's CEO, Alex Mashinsky, transferred valuable non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, from the accounts to his wife's wallet. Lord have mercy. Yeah, it's just getting crazier and crazier, right? So as promised, I gave you a quick rundown on Celsius, and now you can see why they're in bankruptcy court. But you might wonder why the judge was lenient and said that their subsidiary can sell and mine Bitcoin, even though the firm isn't profitable. It's not making money. Well, I guess you can call it some grace and mercy. I don't know. All right, so we've talked about some of the companies impacted by this crypto craziness, and now we're going to talk about the regular Joe, Jane, Jamal, and Jackie of the world who invested and got burned. Some of you probably know of Dogecoin. It's a cryptocurrency, and a lot of folks know that it's promoted by Elon Musk. Of course, he took some social media spankings for all the ways in which he kept promoting it. If you don't know who Elon Musk is, he's the founder of Tesla. Okay, there you go. Well, in February 2021, a guy named Roy, and that's probably an alias, but anyway, he lives in Europe, and he hadn't heard of Dogecoin, so he did what so many of us do, right? He Googled it, and he was intrigued, and I mean, heck, if Elon Musk is promoting it, it must be top notch. So Roy, he pulled out his credit card and he invested about 2,500 euro, which was at that time about 2,200 pounds, and roughly about 2,500 and some change US dollars. And he did this in various cryptocurrencies. So his portfolio's value climbed to about $8,070, and then it went up to about $101,000 and $531. And then I'm using the equivalency in US. Okay. Well, Roy had entered the market during what is called an adrenalized bull run. Translation: it means an extended period of price growth. And what was stimulating all of this was a combination of COVID stimulus packages, low interest rates, and an unprecedented level of enthusiasm for cryptocurrency among furloughed workers. So the bull was zipping and zooming like crazy, right? Running, just high on adrenaline. Well, Roy started spending all of his time watching YouTube videos and speaking to other cryptocurrency enthusiasts in private groups on the messaging app Telegram. And, he's checking his wallets multiple times a day. He's growing more and more obsessed. Well, here's what no one in the crypto world knew. Roy had been a recovering addict who had struggled for years, and finally in 2021, he was sober. Well, that was until cryptocurrency started running things in his world, and Roy relapsed, and he went from checking his crypto wallets a few times a day to checking them about every 10 seconds. That's what he said in an interview. And then he even set an alarm to go off every hour at night when he slept. So he was waking up in the middle of the night checking his wallet. He was obsessed with this financial freedom and not having to work. And he began to fantasize about that new life and what it could bring. And Roy believed that money would face down and smack down and resolve every single problem he had ever faced. And he kept getting excited about his investment portfolio growing and growing and growing. And Roy didn't realize how much he was spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. And then boom, splat. The crypto market crashed. Bitcoin fell from roughly 42,000 in May 2021 to about 23,000 by the end of June 2021. And then towards the end of July, it was around 21,000. And I mean, as of today, it's sitting around $23,226.90 if you look at an equivalent of dollars, okay? US dollars. When the market crashed, Roy's life crumbled all around him. And because he had invested all of his money, right, into the market and lost it all. He took that credit card and think about it. Credit card is borrowed money. You're borrowing it from another party. You're supposed to pay it back with interest. So it's not even that he took money. It's not even that he used his debit card and drew it from his bank account from his own earnings. So he lost it all. Desperate, he started making bad bets, and the value of his portfolio dwindled down to 20,000 euro, then 3,000 euro. And as he admitted in an interview with The Guardian, he got so desperate that he started to self-isolate because he saw himself as a failure. So Roy, let's look at Roy's path. He started investing in February 2021, and by May of that year, he was jobless and broke and without any other viable options. Roy checked into Castle Craig, which is one of the only centers in the world that treats cryptocurrency addiction. And sadly, he lost his job when he relapsed. But thankfully, because he's in Europe and not in the United States, his rehab fees, I shouldn't have done that poke, but his rehab fees are covered by medical insurance. And his cryptocurrency portfolio, which around last month, was worth about 300 euro, which is about $302 US. Roy's story isn't the only one out there like that. And sadly, Roy, just like thousands of other people, invested what he didn't have available to lose. When we invest, we're gambling. We're taking a bet that we will get a return on that investment, and depending on how much of an ROI we're hoping, wishing, and praying for, will determine how much risk we'll take on. I mean, how many of you would have started to diversifying your financial portfolio when Roy's investment skyrocketed to roughly $100,000 US? Or would you have done like he did, just sit on it and watch it grow? I mean, at what point would you have started repositioning yourself and cashing out on some of your digital currency to maybe some foldable ducats, you know, them little coin, little paper, the greenbacks, you know, those things, the old-fashioned things. I mean, how soon, close to that 531,000 zenith, would you have told yourself, okay, let me take some readjustments so I can have some liquidity, the just in case? Or just, even if you're not even thinking about what if this crashes, but you're just saying, let me spread this out. Let me spread this out. Let me cash some of this out and invest in other things, you know, maybe some real estate, some other stuff. I mean, financial advisors are telling people not to pour all of their money into any investment vehicle, right? If you aren't willing to lose it all, then don't invest it all. Invest what you're okay seeing flush down the toilet, because that's how many people feel about losing on their investments. Like it was just flushed and is wallowing in agony in some sewer. Like, if you're not willing to see it go bye-bye, don't invest it. Roy is in a center getting help with his grief. And just like we talked about in episode 75, rebuilding after divorce, death, and other devastation, there's the stages of grief that Roy and others will be walking through and possibly revisiting. Hopefully not. I mean, the healing process, it can't be rushed. It won't happen overnight. It will happen when it happens. I mean, do you recall the stages of grief that I mentioned in episode 75? Right? We have shock and denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And some in the medical community also add in shame and processing as 2 other stages of grief. I mean, we can all empathize with the stage of anger, right? I was angry, you know, reading and hearing about these different stories. We have Alex Koh, an engineer and personal finance YouTuber from Glasgow. Yeah, I mean, he's angry with Do Kwon, who's the South Korean entrepreneur who founded, you know, Terra Luna. Koh said that he lost enough money to buy a 4-bedroom house in London, which ain't cheap. Do Kwon has been accused of fraud by 5 investors based in South Korea. He's being investigated there by a financial crimes unit in the U.S. by the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. So, you know, although Roy and others experienced some life-altering experiences due to their investments imploding on them, and of course there are advocates who argue that this is simply a cryptocurrency winner. Right? The same type of cryptocurrency winner we saw in 2013 and 2018. Slow your roll. You know, you've got some advocates that say that, you know, prices will rebound. Spring will turn to summer. The bear will become the bull. And they roll their eyes and thumb their noses as so-called paper hands investors, which means people, you know, who duck and run at the first sign of trouble. The advocates are urging each other to, you know, hold on for dear life. And buy the dip, which means to purchase coins when, you know, prices are low. And then, of course, others are less certain. They can't help but to ask, well, will the frost ever thaw? So whether you're investing in stocks or digital currencies, you have to know there will be highs and lows. The bear and the bull is still the bear and the bull. And when you don't know what you don't know, then you risk getting burned far worse than anyone else. I mean, we had the 2008 financial crash, and just like then, this recent crash had a ton of bad faith actors that, just like then, will walk away unscathed and hop on another wave to ride. Right? And another point to add is that many of the investors who bought into the crypto boom did so to claw back security after a decade of being smacked around by recession and uncertainty. So we're going to look back on this era about 20 years from now and have all of this hindsight wisdom to share. And future generations will probably say, wow, they were stupid. And then find themselves being blindsided by their own stupidity by the next big thing that comes around that, you know, tickles their fancy. I hope that we learn through this experience to give grace to those who wanted more for themselves and their families, and the decision to invest more than what they should, although not wise, was with good intention. You know, what makes this crypto crash so drastically different than other financial crashes of the past is that social media was a major driver of the frenzy and popularity that helped to create the boom, which eventually became a bust. I mean, YouTube, Twitter, Discord, and other platforms were and still are flooded with content creators talking all things digital currency, cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin, blah, 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 and how to get rich quick, and how to make millions in months, and how to retire in less than a year, and blah to the blah, blah, blah. And the desire to be rich and wealthy is fine. It's when our desire is driven by the need for speed, a microwave mindset, coupled with an insatiable appetite. Greed blinds us and leaves us broken. When we tend to fear the unknown and dread the hard work that we endure daily, and we begin to fantasize about a life free of the grind that has worn us down slowly. And that's a great dream to pursue. I'm with it. But where we go wrong is thinking that it should happen fast. And there's that saying that slow and steady wins the race. And I think that this is a principle many of us balk at, but should align with. It's like the odds of winning the lottery. I mean, like, consider the odds of winning a big jackpot, and it's your first time ever playing. It's a slim chance. Not impossible, but extremely slim. But why do we invest time and money into thinking that, oh yeah, this is going to be my jackpot, and I want the big bucks? It's rare to see a $200 million plus jackpot and then think to yourself, if I could just get enough to pay my past due bills and bring myself current so I can have some breathing room. No, people aren't thinking that. We're thinking of how we can check out of working and producing and contributing to society, and how we can do it as discreetly as possible so family members and people claiming to be family don't start coming out of the cracks like roaches. I mean, we've seen people getting murdered over the lottery winning. So we know that people are like, hey, I got to get some financial and legal advice with how to handle this. It seems like everyone wants to come up without putting in the work. That's what is like the essence, the trend, the vibe that's out there now. But the key word in action in all of this is work. Whether we use our earnings from work and invest it, or we use a credit card, which is someone else's money that has been loaned to us, we don't realize that once we give that money away, we aren't guaranteed a return of one single penny. People can promise us anything. It doesn't mean we're going to actually get it. So we must be wiser and more educated and more disciplined with this money we earn and borrow, with this currencies that we're earning and borrowing. We must learn to be better stewards and ask ourselves, am I willing to lose it? You know, as someone interviewed by The Guardian said, they said, I can't recall the person's name, but they said, ask your elderly parents or grandparents. And if it doesn't make sense to them, if it doesn't jibe in their mind, then leave it be. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what they basically said. And that just might be some sound advice. I know that something I'm starting to realize in this as I'm thinking about and talking about is if you don't have an inner circle, you don't have mentors or advisors who you can bounce ideas off of and run things past and get counsel from, then now's the time to start reaching out, connecting, and seeking that help. You know, we should have our personal and professional advisory members, so to speak, right? Who they each possess knowledge, wisdom, skills, and strengths in areas where we are deficient or just not fully confident. And in some instances where we're overly confident and need someone to check us and check us hard. So like you go to them and you say, hey, I was chatting with my financial advisor about investing in blankety blank, and they told me this and that. And so I wanted to bounce the idea off of you. What are your thoughts? And then you both can ponder, and then you can ponder their list of pros and cons that they come up with and their recommendations, coupled with the counsel your financial advisor provided. And you can then make an informed decision. And let's be clear, this group of people that you come to individually and collectively may or may not include members of your family or some of your friends. So let's just be clear. It may be people that you've met from work, in the community, at the gym, or wherever. if you know someone who's good or great at managing their money, investing, and making their money work for them, as the saying goes, then you should reach out to them and ask if you can call on them from time to time for advice or counsel. There is a difference in how we perceive the two, by the way, and I'm going to talk about that, but I want to also preface this to say, just because they have a podcast, just like, like this one, or they have a YouTube channel or any other, mechanism that they're using to get their message out, it does not mean that they are the Oz, the God of this information, right? They're not controlling the wheels that make it happen. You can only share your insight, your opinion, your thoughts, your advice, whatever. And with that comes risk. And so don't take it as though these are some prophetic words that are coming to you that means it's going to happen, right? That, oh, this is it. This is the confirmation. This is the sign that I needed. Oh, from the heavens above. Like, don't, because then you'll turn around and say, well, you said, yeah, I said that, if in the position I would do X, Y, and Z. Okay. And it didn't mean that I got it. I just said that this is the path I would take. You have to take your own path. You're an adult. So when we look at the difference between how we perceive advice and counsel, I want to say that, for the most part, advice is something that we might quickly disregard, while counsel we might carefully consider, right? So everyone throws out advice. It's our quickly formed opinions about a topic or situation that we think someone should take and implement, and we might stress that they do so with great urgency. It's almost like advice comes with a disclaimer that follow-up or additional research should be pursued before a final decision is made. That's what you should always do with advice. Follow up, do some additional research before you make a decision. Through this podcast, we give advice. Now, if you want our counsel, if you want us to sit down and really dissect things and really just zoom in on your issues, your concerns, your ideas, that's something that, you would receive as a client of Foreman and Associates. Does that make sense? And see, it's something else when we turn to someone for counsel. We're seeking a greater investment of time and energy from them to really take in what we're saying and pondering the possibilities and sharing their sage wisdom and experience and possibly some empathy to help guide us with as little bias as reasonably expected, to give us options to consider for us to then choose as adults which path we want to take. With counsel, there might even be offerings to further assistance and even referrals to other sources that can be of help. And that's how many people view the difference between advice and counsel, advisors and counselors. And yes, you can have an advisor give you counsel and your counselor can provide you with advice. Like, don't start the wordplay games. I mean, but hopefully you get the gist of what I'm saying. That's why we don't take financial advice or counsel from people who are financially broken unless their advice or counsel is warning you of dangers that they face that led them to their current circumstances. Like some of the people that I mentioned in today's episode, they took a hard fall and learned an even harder lesson. They have advice that you should listen to and strongly consider. They worked for and invested their earnings and lost all or most of it. And so they have something to teach you. You'd be a fool to think that their stories couldn't help you make wiser decisions for yourself to potentially avoid the traps and pits that they fell victim to. And that's why Foreman Associates shares these and other lessons through this podcast to help educate and inspire you to pay forward the investment that others paid into us. When we find valuable information, we share it, and we hope that you will do the same. Share this and other episodes with your inner circle and even with someone you just recently met. You never know who you could help by simply sharing. And I also want to take this moment to address another point in today's message. We talked about the grief that investors are experiencing, and we're already facing rough times due to this pandemic and the economy. If you placed your bets on a digital currency or stock investment and things have gone awry, you could have invested in whatever. You're probably not in the best mental and spiritual state right now. So if you or someone is mentally suffering from this or any type of financial roller coaster and you need someone to speak with, and you don't have, a therapist, a counselor to speak with, please call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's formerly the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. They can be reached by dialing 988 from any landline or mobile device in the U.S. And this went into effect on July 16th of this year, 2022. Please note that the previous 1-800-273-TALK, which is 1-800-273-8255, that number will continue to function indefinitely. They're just making it easier. They give you 3 digits, 988. So I just want to be able to share that. And something else, if those of you that are listening, because we do have listeners from other countries, if you're looking for international helplines from overseas, you can visit befrienders.org, BEFRIENDERS.org, and find helplines for your specific countries. So let's change some things up. Right? It was kind of intense. If you're new to us, then you may or may not know that this is our business shout out music. It's for the segment. We're going to change things up and pour in some positive vibes. Crank up our volume as we do some business shout outs. Yes. Let's kind of like shake off some of those, the weight of the crypto craziness. My goodness. All right. I've got 3 businesses that I want to shout out. I want you to check out and support in any way possible. Check out their social media profiles. I want you to like, follow, subscribe, purchase their products and services, or gift them to someone you like and love. Repost their social posts, forward their profiles to your network, show them the love and attention you want someone to show you. You get me? You got me? All right, good. Let's get started. First up, Chief of Stuff. They run your errands for you. They help you with personal tasks that you can't focus on right now. Only $19.99 a month, $19.99 a month, U.S. Unlimited task, available 7 days a week. They're real humans, not bots. They have an innovative task-sharing marketplace that connects you with people who are looking for opportunities to help busy people just like you. You can download their app from the Apple App Store. You'll get matched with a U.S.-based personal gig assistant in minutes. They call them agents. You can easily chat with your agent through the app and give feedback on how well they perform their task. I checked the reviews in the App Store, and someone in February, I didn't look at more recent ones. It was one of the ones that featured there, said they have been using Chief of Stuff for about 2 months, and at that point, and they had their agent book a flight, schedule appointments, looking for apartments for them, and had them call each apartment complex that the agent had created for them in a spreadsheet. And the agent even did some light research, organized photos and folders on the client's Google Drive, and more. So, there's some capabilities out there that can be fulfilled for you. Chief of Stuff claims that your tasks are always completed to your satisfaction, or it's on them, which translates to me that they either get it right or it's no charge to you. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief of Stuff. Anyway, check them out. Give them a try. The first task is free. If you like it, love it, or not, just let me know. I'd like to hear about your experience with Chief of Stuff. You can find their app in the Apple Store by searching Stuff and Personal Assistant. They're on Instagram at Chief of Stuff. So there you go. Let me know. Next up, Ethereal Luxury Restrooms. They're serving Southern California. They're SoCal's most luxurious portable restroom rentals. They will customize at no additional charge the interior to fit your event theme, from weddings to corporate events and whatever private event you can imagine. Their portable luxury restrooms will be 100 times better than the typical blue closet restroom, and that's their words, not mine. I'm gonna be very clear. These aren't porta potties, folks. These are luxury portable restrooms. If you've never used one before, you're missing out. I've rented luxury restrooms from a Georgia-based vendor, and I was so glad that I did. And So are my guests. Now, once again, Ethereal Luxury Restrooms is in California, Southern California, servicing Southern California. So don't call them for a Northern Cali or out-of-state request and then say, well, I heard about you on the Don't Call It Small Business podcast, as though I told you that your request would be honored for, Georgia or South Carolina. No, don't do me like that. But seriously, if you're in SoCal or planning an event in SoCal, check them out. You can text them at area code 619-248-0786. You can email them or send them a DM on Instagram. They're at Ethereal Luxury Restrooms. Visit their website, etherealluxuryrestrooms.com. Last but definitely not least, let's shout out Divine Creations Cuisine. Yes. They're providing catered cuisine and conscious concessions with a Creole twist. Their CEO is Chandra Muhammad. She goes by Sean, and she says she's a Texas girl from a Louisiana world. According to her website, her desire is to serve and feed those in need of great tasting food, and that began at the young age of 6 and continues to this day. She started by adding her own special Creole twist to a recipe shared by her friend Stacy's Aunt Lorraine. And Sean became known for her signature Creole chicken fettuccine, which contains a special cheese sauce that is unmatched. That's what her website says. Oh, and for those of you in a fraternal organization, she's an AKA and proud of it. You can tell she's representing by the pink and green colors she chose for her company logo and website. So make sure you support her and her team every possible way. Even if you're not affiliated with a fraternal organization, if you eat food, then check out and support Divine Creations Cuisine. They're in Texas, baby. You can find them on Instagram at Divine Creations Cuisine. They provide personal and family meal prep assistance, cooking coaching classes, and they have their Keep It Creole all-purpose seasoning for sale. That way you can liven up home-cooked meals any day of the week. So even if you can't get some of their yummy food in your belly, you can at least get some of their all-purpose seasoning. So check that out. They even have a pop-up truck that you can follow on Instagram at DC Pop-Up Truck. Currently, they're testing sites and only doing private events. So give them a call and see what's popping. You can reach them at area code 281-705-0819. That's 281-705-0819. Now, if you or someone you know could benefit from the added exposure that our business shout out segment provides, reach out to us and share your business information to be considered for an upcoming episode. Just visit ForemanLLC.com/podcast. That's ForemanLLC.com/podcast to be considered. You can also provide us feedback, or if you want to share you have some questions or you want us to cover a topic, just go ahead and use that, and we are there to aim to please. Oh goodness, I have this has been an interesting topic, an interesting episode, right? Oh my goodness. Well, folks, it's that time again. It's time for us to go our separate ways until we see each other next. As I mentioned earlier, if you guys have any questions or suggestions about the show, please visit ForemanLLC.com/podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please rate and review the podcast so that others can find us. We want to make sure that we give proper credit for our show's theme song. It's called Higher Up. And as I mentioned, our business segment song, it's called Pulsar. Both songs are by the talented Shane Ivers. I want to leave you with a quote from Hal Finney. He has since passed away since sharing these words, but the value of his wisdom should not die with him. Hal said, since we're all rich with Bitcoins, we ought to put some of this unearned wealth to good use. Now, if you don't know Hal Finney, he was an early contributor to the cyberpunk mailing list back in the early 1990s, just like Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. And he was instrumental in helping Bitcoin grow from day one. And this quote from Finney highlights what all who have become rich through Bitcoin and heck any other investment strategy that you have pursued, you should do. You should give back and help others. And that's my advice and my counsel. Use it, apply it or not. It's your choice. And I leave you with that.